The first step in painting this landscape is to mix zinc white, ochre, and cerulean blue to create a soft, light blue color for the sky. Near the mountains, I make the sky slightly warmer and more golden by adding a bit more ochre. This brings extra light into the painting. I'm restoring the oldest herbal shop in Barcelona, and this little painting will become part of its interior. And honestly, it is a beautiful thing when something so therapeutic also happens to be paid work. I'm using the finest brush I could find, and the panel already has an imprimatura, a thin base tone that gives every color a natural warmth. I start by applying thick paint with a small brush so the strokes form an even texture. Then I take a watercolor brush and gently blend the paint with light movements. This method works beautifully with oils, but probably won't work with acrylics. Notice how I compose the ancient aqueduct so that the bright sky shines through its arches. For the mountains, I'm mixing a slightly darker and warmer shade. This helps them feel more solid and material while still keeping that sense of open space. I hope you already made yourself a cup of tea, because from here on, nothing is really complicated. If you want to try the same kind of painting at home, just go step by step. And most importantly, do not be afraid to make your shadows darker. That alone is one of the easiest ways to make a painting instantly stronger. The idea that every shadow has to be painted with tiny details, almost like a satellite photo, that is just a myth. In shadows, what really matters is a solid tone and soft edges, not the eyelashes on a tree in the distance. So let me share a few more common myths about painting. Myth number 2. Highlights should be pure white. Many beginners think that if light hits an object, you have to put down straight titanium white. But pure white looks flat and lifeless. In real life, a highlight almost always has some color in it. A bit of blue from the sky, or green from the grass. Add just a touch of that, and suddenly the light feels natural. Myth number 3. You should never use black. Some artists are afraid of black paint, thinking it makes colors dirty, but black is simply another pigment. Mixed with other colors, it can create deep violets, smoky grays, even rich greens. It is not the black that is the problem, it is how you use it. Myth number 4. Only expensive paints and brushes will work. This is a very popular idea. Of course, good materials help, but they do not do the painting for you. The way you hold the brush, how you place a stroke, how you see light and dark, that matters far more. A pricey brush can make the same mistakes as a cheap one if the basics are missing. Myth number 5. Oil takes months to dry. Not always. A very thick layer can take time, yes, but thin underpainting sets much faster. It depends on the pigment and the medium. The nice thing about oils is they stay workable long enough for you to fix mistakes and adjust shapes without stress. Myth number 6. You cannot paint without solvents. That is not true. There are entire techniques for solvent-free oil painting using just oil or medium. It is healthier for your lungs and makes the process calmer. Myth number 7. Any surface is fine as long as you cover it. People sometimes grab cardboard or wood and throw on one random coat, then wonder why paint looks dull or patchy. The surface is the foundation. If it is prepared right, the colors sit well, stay bright, and last much longer. Myth number 8. You must copy photos exactly. A photo is only a reference. Cameras often crush halftones and distort colors. If you copy pixel for pixel, the result looks stiff. What matters more is the sense of light and atmosphere, not photoreal accuracy. Myth number 9. The rule of thirds is the golden law. It is helpful sometimes, but it is not magic. Real composition comes from big shapes, rhythm, and contrast, not just placing things on grid lines. Myth number 10. Shadows and highlights are always the same color. Not at all. The color of a shadow depends on the color of the light. Cool daylight makes shadows warmer, and warm evening light makes shadows cooler. There is no one formula. Myth number 11. Likeness comes only from talent. This is maybe the most discouraging myth. Getting something to look right is not magic. It is about checking angles, comparing proportions, and measuring distances. Anyone can learn it. Myth number 12. Details should be painted first. That temptation is strong, to start with grass blades or windows. But if the big shapes and tones are missing, details will not save the painting. First comes the structure, then the small accents. One small exercise for all of them. Next time you paint, pick one of these myths and break it on purpose. For example, make your highlights slightly colored instead of pure white, or keep the shadows simple and dark without chasing details. Little experiments like that often teach more than a dozen rules. By the way, have you ever thought of painting as yesterday's propaganda? For most of history, images were the fastest way into people's minds. If you could control what they saw, you shaped what they believed. Take Napoleon. Jacques-Louis David painted him taller, stronger, on a rearing horse, pointing toward destiny. None of it was real, but for people who never saw him in person, that was the truth. It was basically the Instagram profile picture of the time. A carefully staged image that made an ordinary man look like a legend. And later, film directors borrowed the same trick. Low angles, dramatic light, movement that says, "Here is your hero." Today it lives in thumbnails, posters, even selfies. The technique never went away. Now think about repetition. One portrait can impress you, but 1,000 of the same portrait can rewire how you see the world. In the Soviet Union, there were actual art factories, giant buildings where rows of painters sat in identical studios, all producing the same image of Dan Lennon. Floor after floor of the same face, the same smile, the same light. It was epic in scale and horrifying in meaning. Like a scene out of Equilibrium, individuality erased, art reduced to mass production, creativity turned into control. That is what the system did to artists, turned them into tools of propaganda, repeating one icon until the image itself replaced reality. And you know what? The method still works. Governments and advertisers today use the same tools. They repeat logos, faces, colors, until they feel familiar and safe. They stage leaders and celebrities in ways that exaggerate presence. The surface changed, from oil paint and posters to feeds and filters, but the psychology stayed the same. So when you see an old fresco, a heroic portrait, or even a Soviet poster, try to notice not just the style, but the function. These were not decorations. They were weapons of influence. And in today's world of social media, we are still surrounded by the same tricks, only faster, louder, and far harder to escape. And here's something to think about while you paint. In a way, you are also part of this long chain of visual messages. Every brushstroke you make says something, even if it is quiet. The difference is, you are free. Nobody is standing behind you telling you what the image must look like. At least I hope so. That freedom means you get to bring a little piece of your own philosophy into the world. Your painting can be like one brick in a bigger wall. Small by itself, but part of something that lasts. Maybe your work simply calms people down. Maybe it reminds them of nature, or maybe it makes them ask questions they did not expect to ask. That is already influence. If one day you feel like making something sharp, something political, do not hold back. Let it out. Release the dog, so to speak. Because art has always been more than decoration. It has always carried voices, hidden or loud. And now, finally, that voice can be yours. Sometimes you say the paintings look shiny, but that is just part of the process. To protect your eyes, you need about 400 lux in the studio, which means strong lights on both sides of your painting. Trust me, it is necessary. There are so many little details that can make or break your experience. The right brushes, good paint, the right mediums to mix or thin it, proper canvas material, and even something as basic as how you hold the brush or where you stand while painting. Some of these things I learned in art school. Some I picked up from other painters, some came with time. But the one thing I know for sure, never stick to just one teacher. Learn from many and eventually you'll find your own voice. If you're curious, I put together a painting course. It's for beginners, but also for anyone who wants to ground their practice in real technique. It costs about as much as filling up your car, but way less depressing. You pay once and get access for as long as you need. Links in the description. Our underpainting has dried, so now we can add a few details. Drop in some clouds, sketch out a couple of branches. The formula stays the same. Brighter colors this time, visible brush texture on the objects, and always those strong warm shadows. Simple, but powerful. And here's something you might not expect. The principles of painting can actually teach lessons far outside of art. Lessons that apply to programmers, managers, even cooks. First, patience and layers. In painting, you do not get the finished masterpiece in one stroke. You build it step by step, and underpainting, then tones, then details, then glazes. Try to rush it, and the whole thing falls apart. Programmers know this feeling. You cannot write perfect code in one go. You write, test, adjust, rewrite. Cooks know it too. Flavors develop in stages. You cannot throw everything into the pan at once and hope for depth. Layers matter, in paint, in code, and in the kitchen. Second, learning to see. Painters train themselves to look past the object and notice values, shapes, light, and shadow. A tree is not a tree. It is patches of light and dark, warm and cool. Programmers do the same with messy code. They stop staring at letters and see the structure underneath. Cooks do it with ingredients. Instead of just carrots, they see sweetness, color, texture, and how it plays with the dish. Third, mistakes are part of the process. In oil painting, a wrong stroke is not fatal. You can scrape it, paint over it, shift the color. Often the texture left behind even adds character. Programmers know a bug is not the end. It is just a step toward better code. Cooks know that when a dish does not go as planned, it can be reworked. A too thick sauce becomes a spread. A failed loaf of bread becomes croutons. The lesson is the same. Resilience turns mistakes into something valuable. Fourth, focus and edges. Painters know not every edge should be sharp. If you try to make every leaf crisp, the viewer gets lost. You decide where the eye should go, and you soften the rest. Programmers deal with the same when choosing which features matter most. Managers know it when setting goals. Not everything can be a top priority. And cooks do it too. Not every flavor in the dish should scream. One main note should lead, the rest supports it. Fifth, the invisible hand. Painters often hint at detail instead of spelling it out. A suggestion of a branch and shadow can feel more alive than painting every twig. The same goes for cooking. A touch of spice, just enough for you to notice, is often more powerful than over-seasoning. Programmers and managers also know the value of restraint. Not everything needs to be explained or built out to the last detail. Sometimes less really is more. And that circles back to what we are doing here. As I add color, I am not finishing every cloud or every branch. I am building up in layers, keeping the shadows warm and strong, letting the painting breathe. That mindset works not only in art, but in life. Big shapes first, details later, mistakes absorbed into the process. So the next time you pick up a brush, remember, you are not just learning how to paint. You are practicing patience, observation, resilience, focus, and restraint. Skills that make you better not only as an artist, but also as a programmer, as a manager, or even as a cook standing over a pan. Now that we have some color down and the painting is starting to breathe, let us slow down for a moment. Take a quiet breath in and let it out slowly. Do it again, just one calm breath. When you paint, time itself shifts. You are not chasing deadlines, not scrolling, not racing. You are simply here, brush, color, light. Even if you are only watching right now, you can join me in that state. Let your thoughts pause for just a few seconds. Notice how the brush moves. A soft stroke here, a little touch of warm shadow there. It is simple, almost repetitive. And that is the beauty of it. The more you repeat, the calmer it becomes. This is not about rushing toward a finished picture. It is about being in the process. We live in a world that constantly pulls us in 10 directions at once. But in painting, all of that noise falls away. You look at one spot, maybe the edge of a cloud, or the curve of a branch, and you stay with it. Nothing else matters. That single focus is like pressing a reset button for your mind. So if you want, try this with me right now. Pick one thing in your surroundings. A cup on the table, a plant by the window, a shadow on the wall. Just look at it for a few seconds without naming it, without judging. See it as patches of color, light, and shadow. That is exactly what painters do. And the longer you hold your attention there, the quieter your head becomes. This is why painting feels like meditation. Each brushstroke is like a breath. Each pause is a moment of stillness. Even the mistakes, the uneven edges, become part of the rhythm. You are not trying to control everything. You are allowing yourself to simply be present. So whether you ever paint or not, give yourself a moment like this now and then. A few deep breaths, a little stillness, a chance to notice the world as it is. That is the hidden gift of painting. It trains you to stop running, to stand still, and to really see. And since we are already slowing down with the painting, let me share something fascinating about why people enjoy watching someone paint. There is a mechanism in the brain called mirror neurons. These are special nerve cells that activate not only when you perform an action yourself, but also when you simply watch someone else do it. So right now, as you see me move the brush, your brain is simulating the same motion, almost as if you were holding the brush. You feel part of the act without lifting a finger. That is why videos of painting, cooking, or woodworking can feel so relaxing. Think of those clips where someone slices vegetables perfectly, or smooths wet concrete, or power washes a sidewalk. Millions of people watch them because the brain is tricked into thinking, I'm doing this, while saving all the effort and energy. You get the satisfaction without the work. Neuroscientists at the University of Parma in the 1990s first discovered this effect while studying monkeys. They noticed that the same neurons fired when a monkey grasped a peanut and when it watched another monkey do the same. Later, studies confirmed the effect in humans, and now mirror neurons are often linked to empathy, learning by imitation, and that oddly satisfying pleasure we feel when watching repetitive actions. And it makes sense. Painting has its own rhythm. Dip the brush, stroke the panel, blend the edge, repeat. The brain loves rhythm. It feels predictable, safe, almost hypnotic. That is why art videos, even when you are not painting yourself, put people into a calm, almost trance-like state. It is not just aesthetics, it is literally how your nervous system responds. So when you sit here with me, following the clouds, the branches, the shadows, your brain is quietly rewarding you. It is giving you the feeling of painting along, but with no cleanup, no tired hands, no paint stains, just the pleasant echo of the act. And if you want to take that satisfaction to the next level, try actually picking up a brush. The brain simulation will turn into the real thing, and the pleasure doubles. Watching is good, but doing is even better. And before we wrap up, let me give you one last thought: how to prepare yourself emotionally before you start creating. It does not need to be dramatic. You do not have to wait for inspiration to strike like lightning. What helps most is a small ritual, something that tells your mind, now it is time to paint. For some people, it is clearing the table, laying out the brushes, and making a cup of tea. For others, it is a single deep breath, or even putting on the same playlist every time. The point is to create a gentle transition. Leave behind the rush of the day and step into a slower rhythm. Remind yourself, this is not about perfection. This is about being present. If you can set that mood before you touch the brush, half the battle is already won.